Julian Reeves was walking out to the parking lot at 11 o'clock at night, the keys to his Range Rover in his hand, his mind still thinking about the third quarter numbers, when a fading old car headlight made him slow his steps. It was not a noise that made him stop. The parking lot, after closing hours of one of the 217 supermarkets bearing his family name, was always silent in a familiar way. It was not the old car parked way off in the far corner, where the security camera only swept past once every 40 seconds. It was not the two small heads lying curled up in the back seat, one with its face buried into the shoulder of the other. But it was what he did not see. There were no pillows. In the place where there should have been a pillow, there was only an old plaid jacket, rolled up, stuffed under the head of the smaller child. The same way of rolling. The same tilt angle of the sleeve sticking out, exactly as he had seen it hundreds of nights, in hundreds of different parking lots, 27 years ago, when he himself was the child lying on that jacket. He stood still, one hand still holding the keys, unable to take another step toward his car, because the thing that his mother used to roll up every night, so that he would not have to sleep on the freezing plastic headrest, was her own jacket. And what he just saw in that car was not an old image in his memory. It was happening, right now, 15 steps away from him, on the very land bearing his name. Simone Ellis, 31 years old, a night shift cashier, $13.85 an hour, having just been cut down to 27 hours a week, was resting her head on the steering wheel, both hands still gripping tightly, as if sleeping without daring to fully sleep. He looked through the windshield. The dashboard dimly lit a row of red numbers. Not a clock. It was the gas level, under a quarter mark. There was a very soft humming sound. The heater was still running, but someone, probably her, had turned it down to the lowest level to save gas, warm enough so the two little children would not shiver, not enough so that she would also be warm. He stood there longer than he thought, long enough to realize that what he was seeing was not a case needing to be reported to the police, not an evening news report. It was a scene he had memorized since before he could read, only differing in the neon light behind her back, now spelling the word Reeves, written in the exact font he had chosen the year he was 30, when the company was just listed. The older child, perhaps around 6, 7 years old, stirred in its sleep, mumbling something he could not hear clearly through the glass. Only 3 words slipped out, quiet as a breath. "Our car is warm." Julian Reeves stood rooted to the cold concrete ground, his hands still holding the keys to the car worth half a year's salary of the woman sleeping behind the steering wheel, 15 steps away from him, and he could not remember when was the last time he heard those 3 words. He only knew one thing, clear as a punch to the middle of the chest. He had once said that exact sentence to his own mother, in another car, in another parking lot, 27 years ago. And she had never lived long enough to hear him say it again, for the second time, when he had enough money so that no one in his family would have to say that sentence ever again. Before continuing, let me ask you a question. What city are you listening to this story from? Leave the name of the place you live in the comments section. I want to know how far this story has gone. And if you want to hear it all, please subscribe to the channel. This story is still long. Julian Reeves owns 217 supermarkets bearing his family name. He has never pushed a shopping cart through any of the checkout counters in them. He has a penthouse overlooking the Charles River, 12 rooms, a long dining table with enough seats for 16 people. In the 6 years living there, not once have 16 people sat at the table at the same time. He has a $28,000 watch worn on his left wrist. It is not worn to check the time. He wears it to remember the feeling of what time meant when every minute was still counted by the amount of gas left in the tank. He has a wardrobe with 62 suits, each custom tailored to his measurements. He has never worn a suit more than 3 times before giving it away. He has a team of 7 people just to manage his schedule. None of those 7 people know that on the 30th of September every year, he will disappear from all meetings, all calls. No one can contact him. He has $5,200,000,000. That amount of money has never, even once, bought back a normal evening where his mother sat eating a meal with him at a table that was not the back seat of a car. Every year, on exactly the 30th of September, Julian Reeves takes off the 62 suits, puts on a gray hoodie with a frayed collar, drives a 2009 Honda Civic that he still pays insurance for year-round just to use for this single day, and heads to Dorchester. He stops at a small flower stall on Bowdoin Street, buying a bouquet of white chrysanthemums, the cheapest kind in the stall. The florist has known his face for 11 years, never asking why a man driving an old Honda Civic would choose the cheapest kind of flower when he clearly could buy the whole flower stall if he wanted to. He places the bouquet of white chrysanthemums on a small stone slab at Cedar Grove Cemetery, engraved with the name Gwendolyn Reeves, and sits down on the grass, saying nothing for the first 15 minutes. His mother once said to him, the year he was 12, when he asked why she always chose the cheapest kind of flower every time she passed by a funeral in the neighborhood. The best flower that poor people can buy, my child. Cheap, but durable. Like us, my child. He kept that exact habit for 11 years, even after his bank account had added 9 digits. $5,200,000,000, and Julian Reeves still drives an old Civic to visit a grave with only an engraved name. No birth date, because when he had enough money to engrave the birth date on the tombstone, he could no longer remember exactly which day it was. His mother had never told him. She said birthdays were a luxury reserved for families with a cake to blow out candles. Tonight, after leaving the parking lot, he did not go straight back to the penthouse. He sat in the Range Rover, lights off, about 50 meters away from Simone Ellis's car, looking through the rearview mirror, his hand still holding the phone that he had not even unlocked. There was a message line from the assistant, asking whether he confirmed the 7 o'clock meeting tomorrow morning with the board of directors about the proposal to further cut personnel costs at stores with low revenue. He looked at the screen lighting up in the dark, then looked over to the old car where 2 children were sleeping on a folded jacket used as a pillow, only 50 meters apart, on the same plot of land, with the same Reeves logo shining above both cars. He turned off the phone screen, did not reply to the message, and remembered a sentence he had heard an unknown number of times in his life, never fully understanding its meaning until tonight. Wealth never echoes in an empty room, but a cold car in the middle of an empty parking lot echoes endlessly. He opened the car door, stepped out, and walked toward the neon light bearing his own name. Gwendolyn Reeves worked 2 jobs. From 6 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon, she cleaned the office of a law firm in downtown Boston, where men in suits brushed past her every morning as if she were a part of the carpet. From 4 in the afternoon until the store closed, she stood at the checkout counter of a small supermarket on Blue Hill Street. No Reeves existed at that time, just a family grocery store paying her $9.50 an hour, in cash, with nothing called insurance. People always recognized her from afar, even before seeing her face. The smell of pine sol mixed with frying fat clung to her shirt, a smell that no one in that law firm ever had to bring home after 8 hours of work. Julian, the year he was 13, slept in the back seat of a rusty Buick because the rent for the last room had run out right at the beginning of that month. That night was colder than usual. The heater in the car hummed, then shut off completely. Julian curled up, only watching his own breath turning into frost on the car window. Gwendolyn took off the only plaid jacket she had, rolled it up, placed it under her son's head instead of a pillow. Julian asked if his mother was cold. She smiled and said, "Our car is warm." That was not a lie to reassure. That was an oath of a mother telling her own coldness that it was not allowed to be present tonight. Gwendolyn Reeves died the year she was 56 years old. Heart failure. Hospital records noted she had gone to the community clinic twice for chest pain, both times being given a prescription for painkillers and an appointment paper for a follow-up visit after 6 weeks, because that was the closest available schedule of the only doctor accepting uninsured patients in the area. She did not live until that follow-up visit. They found her in the 1-bedroom apartment that Julian, then 27 years old, had just rented for her after 5 years of saving, slumped on the sofa, her hand still holding the notebook recording the monthly expenses. Her bank account had $61 left. In the fridge, there was half a loaf of bread, an almost empty jar of mustard, and a carton of milk she bought for the neighbor's grandchild whom she thought would visit that weekend. The forensic doctor noted in the report the direct cause was acute heart failure. But there was another line, shorter, located in the notes section. Treatment delayed due to scheduling conflicts. No one wrote down that scheduling conflicts meant a woman had waited 6 weeks to see a doctor, and her heart could not wait until the 6th week. Julian Reeves earned the first $1 million in his life 3 years after that day. He could calculate it exactly to the day. 3 years, 4 months, 11 days. That was the time from the day his mother passed away to the day he put pen to paper signing his first 7-figure contract. Late. Always late. 3 years late to buy her a real house instead of a rented apartment. 3 years late to tell her that she did not need to roll up her only jacket to make a pillow for anyone anymore. He kept that plaid jacket in a wooden box in the office. No one was allowed to touch it. Tonight, standing 50 meters away from Simone Ellis's car, Julian Reeves felt a thing he had never named exactly in 27 years, welling up from the middle of his chest. He took one more step toward the car, then stopped, his hand still tightly gripping the Range Rover keys to the point the metal edges pressed into his palm. Because he knew, if he took one more step, he would no longer be the man standing behind the logo light bearing his family name. He would only be a 13-year-old boy, standing in the middle of a cold parking lot, not knowing whether he would be in time, this time, or late once again. Julian did not remember how many more steps his feet had taken. When he realized it, the distance was less than 10 meters. The passenger side window was slightly open, a small crack. The zipper on Simone's jacket was broken halfway. She had pinned it with a safety pin. The left knee of her jeans was torn in a line, the kind of tear of fabric that had worn out for too long. Her fingernails were cut short, filed evenly, but there were 3 vertical cracks on her thumbnail. She had given up vanity a long time ago, but had not given up dignity. On the dashboard, next to the row of numbers indicating the gas level, there was a small blue flashlight turned off, placed neatly like an inseparable object, not rolling around like a forgotten item. The older child stirred, then opened its eyes. It did not cry, did not scream for its mother. It only asked, its voice still sleepy. "Mom, are we going camping?" Simone startled awake, pulled her child closer, her voice whispering steadily. "Yes, we are going camping. Go back to sleep, my child. I am cold." Simone pulled the thin blanket up higher, saying, completely unaware that someone was standing less than 10 meters away, "Our car is warm." Julian Reeves stood dead, still in the middle of the parking lot. He could not step forward, could not step back, could not breathe without feeling something in his chest tensing up like a string that had been pulled taut for 27 years. Simone raised her head through the window crack, and for the first time, she saw him. Not a panicked look, just a straight look, evaluating him from head to toe in exactly half a second. She did not say anything, only pulled her child closer to her body, her hand placed on the door handle. Julian did not take his eyes off the slightly open window crack, but the thing he was looking at was no longer the parking lot in front of him. It was another parking lot, behind a small grocery store on Blue Hill Street, 27 years ago. The same fluorescent light humming at a frequency only people who had been under it for too long could hear. The same smell of grease from the kitchen ventilation pipe blowing out into the cold air. The same kind of darkness swallowing up the far corners where the security camera did not sweep past. The woman sitting behind the steering wheel at that time was not a stranger. She was all that the 13-year-old boy Julian ever had. He superimposed the 2 women in his head, like 2 transparent photographs placed closely together under the light. The same posture slumping forward, the back still trying to keep straight no matter how exhausted. The same jacket rolled up as a pillow, the same tilt angle of the sleeves sticking out. The same 3 words spoken in the dark, so a child would believe that the cold did not exist. The only difference was, 27 years ago, there was no one standing outside the car looking in. Julian remembered that night, the night he lay listening to his mother's steady breathing above his head, and he had promised himself, in the way a 13-year-old child promises things it is not yet capable of fulfilling, that when he grew up, he would never let his mother have to sleep in a car again. He had kept that promise, with his mother. But standing here, in the middle of the parking lot of his own company, watching another woman doing exactly what his mother used to do, he realized a thing that he had never thought of in the past 27 years. That promise had never been exclusively for one person. He had promised not to let anyone have to roll up their only jacket as a pillow for their child anymore. He just forgot that part, because he had been busy building an empire bearing his family name, big enough so that no one would remember it started from a rusty Buick. That empire, right now, was shining neon light down on another car, another mother, 2 other children, right on the very land bearing his name. He had promised himself that he would never let anyone have to do that anymore. He was 27 years late. Simone Ellis was born in Mattapan, in a 2-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of a red brick building, and her mother, Denise, worked as a house cleaner for wealthy families in Chestnut Hill 6 days a week. Denise only had one sentence, repeated over and over: "You work, you pay for yourself, you owe no one and no one owes you." Simone was 23 years old when she met Marcus, a tall, quiet construction worker with a smile that made a whole corner of Blue Hill Avenue light up. They got married at the Baptist Church on Warren Street, a small party in the church basement with boxed mac and cheese and midnight baked banana bread using browned bananas. Kizia was born 2 years later. Micah was born 3 years after that. Marcus worked for a private construction contractor, climbing scaffolding at construction sites all over Boston, even on skin-cutting windy winter days. He never complained, only coming home every night with calloused hands and a smile still the same as the first day. Then one November morning, when Micah was exactly 8 months old, Marcus left home for work as usual and never came back. Not a single message, not a single call to explain. His phone number stopped working 3 days later. The contractor said he had quit his job, stating no reason, leaving no new address. Simone waited a week, then 2 weeks, keeping his dinner portion in the fridge until it had to be thrown away. She never received any explanation. She was 28 years old when she became a single mother, with a 4-year-old child and a child who had just turned 1, without a single cent of child support, because no one could find Marcus to ask, and the court needed an address to send the summons, which she did not have. She applied to work as a night shift cashier at Reeves on Blue Hill Street, because that was the only job that accepted a shift from 10 at night to 6 in the morning, the only time she could arrange for a neighbor to watch the 2 children sleep. $13.85 an hour, 36 hours a week, enough so the company would not have to pay for her health insurance under federal law. 3 months ago, that number was cut down to 27 hours. No one called to warn her. She only saw it on the scheduling app, a light blue notification line, with no explanation, no name of the manager who approved it. The landlord gave her 14 more days, then another 30 days. Then he could not wait any longer. Simone started selling things, following an order she had set in her own head. The television bought 8 years ago for $300. She sold for $80 at a pawn shop on Dudley Street. The bed frame she took apart and sold the week after to get money to buy 2 more weeks of gas, and started sleeping on the floor so the 2 children could keep the remaining mattress. The old phone, $45. The microwave, $20. But there was a line she never crossed. She never sold anything belonging to her children. Not Micah's old tricycle, not Kizia's puzzle toy set, not the small blue flashlight, the only thing left from the old apartment, the thing Simone still used every night to read stories to her 2 children in the darkness of the car. 3 weeks ago, the landlord took back the apartment. Simone packed everything left into the trunk of the 2009 Toyota Corolla, stacked up to the point she had to leave behind the mini fridge, the last item she still intended to keep. The night Simone stuffed the last bags of clothes into the trunk, she did not know she had just joined a rank that no one could fully count. According to the National Center for Homeless Education, over 1,200,000 students across America are recorded to experience homelessness in a school year, and that number only counts those with names in school records, not counting families like Simone, those who have not yet had time to declare to anyone. Among them, a significant portion do not live in shelters or under bridges like the familiar image. They live in the very cars parked in the parking lots of supermarkets, churches, commercial centers, places bright enough to feel safe, crowded enough so no one notices a car parked overnight. According to the National Alliance to End Homelessness, the majority of them are women, the majority are working, and nearly 9 in 10 cases start from only a single financial shock: a medical bill, a sudden job loss, a cut in working hours. Not because they are lazy, only because the distance between a stable life and a cold car is much thinner than what people still imagine. Simone did not know those numbers. She only knew she needed to teach her 2 children to call sleeping in the car a camping trip, and hoped they believed her long enough to not be afraid. The first night sleeping in the car, Kizia asked her mother, "Mom, is this our real home or are we just visiting?" Simone did not answer immediately. She pulled her child closer, kissed its head, and said she would find a way. But one night, about 2 weeks ago, when Simone thought both children were fast asleep, she opened the small canvas bag Kizia brought to school every day to check her child's lunch. She found crumbled cookie crumbs at the bottom of the bag. Kizia had hidden half of the cookie portion handed out at school, brought it back and hid it in the bag to save for Micah. Simone sat flat on the front seat, covered her mouth tightly with her hand, so there would be no sound loud enough to wake her 2 children. She did not cry because of hunger. She cried because her 7-year-old daughter had learned how to sacrifice before she had time to learn how to be a child. Simone hastily wiped away her tears with the back of her hand, raised her head, and realized the man out there had not yet left. He stood still in one place for nearly 10 minutes, neither stepping closer nor turning away, just standing there under the neon light, like a shadow not knowing what to do with itself. She rolled down the car window, a sufficient amount, enough for a voice to slip out, but not enough to reveal everything inside. The other hand already placed on the key, ready to start the engine if needed. "What do you need?" It was not a question. It was a boundary, erected by the surprisingly calm voice of a woman who had learned how not to let fear show on the outside, even though inside it was screaming. Julian took another half step, then stopped, keeping his distance, both hands hanging loosely at his sides, deliberately letting her clearly see he was holding nothing. "I do not mean to bother you," he said, his voice hoarser than he thought. "I was just passing by, then standing looking at someone's car for 10 minutes. Simone did not lower her voice, nor raise it. "Are you a security guard? Or the new night shift manager?" "No," Julian shook his head. "I do not work here. Then what are you standing in the Reeves parking lot at 11 o'clock at night for?" Julian remained silent for a second, weighing whether to tell the truth or not, then deciding that after tonight, the truth was the only thing he could still bring. "I am the owner of this chain," he said. Simone looked at him from head to toe, a look that did not soften at all, only adding a portion of wariness. "Then even better," she said. "I do not need your pity." She pulled the blanket up higher, holding her 2 children closely to her body, her voice starting to tremble, not because of fear, but because of something that had been repressed for too long now, just having a place to burst out. "I need 27 hours a week back to 36 hours, so I am eligible to have health insurance as prescribed by law. I need your company to notify 30 days in advance when cutting my working hours, and not a light blue notification line on the app, with no name, no signatory. I need an apartment, any apartment, that accepts a single mother with the income of a part-time cashier. Can you do any of that?" Julian did not answer immediately. He stood there, letting her question hang suspended in the cold air, not trying to say anything to fill that silence, because he knew anything he said right now would also sound like an empty promise. Simone continued, her voice hardening, each sentence like a cut. "Everyone wants to help. No one wants to fix. People hand me a free food bag at the church, then see themselves as heroes, then go home and sleep well. But no one asks why a woman working the night shift for 4 straight years, never late for a single shift, never taking a day off without permission, is sitting in a car with 2 children at 11 o'clock at night, right in front of the store she works at." Julian looked at her, then looked over her shoulder, into the car, where the 2 children were still sleeping, one resting its head on the rolled-up jacket. He did not persuade. He did not make an offer, did not open his wallet, did not say the sentences people usually say in this situation. He only spoke a naked truth, the only thing he truly had. "I am here," he said, slowly, "because I heard your daughter say 3 words when she thought she was dreaming. Our car is warm. My mother once said that exact sentence to me, in another car, 27 years ago. And I have not been able to close my eyes since hearing it again." Simone paused, not because the sentence softened her heart, but because there was something in his voice, something she did not expect, making her have to look at him again, more closely. "This is not charity," Julian continued, his voice still hoarse, not trying to appear emotional, simply unable to hide it. "My mother died when her account had $47 left. I was 3 years late, not in time to give her anything more decent than that. I think the minimum I can do tonight is not be late once again." Simone did not fully understand that sentence. She did not know who Gwendolyn Reeves was, did not know the plaid jacket in the wooden box in his office, did not know what the number $47 meant to the man standing in front of her. But she understood the voice. It was pain, the kind of pain that this person recognizes in the other, like the way soldiers recognize each other in the middle of a crowded room, not needing a single explanation. She did not say anything more, only rolled the car window back up halfway, keeping her distance, but no longer looking at him as a danger. Only like a stranger carrying something heavy, standing in the middle of a parking lot at midnight, not knowing where to put it down. The next morning, Julian did not go straight back to the office. He called the person in charge of operations for the Northeast region, a man named Gary Whitfield, to come meet him 3 hours earlier than the usual schedule. Gary walked in, holding a folder in his hand, his voice still cheerful like any other morning, not knowing what he was about to be asked about. Julian placed a name in front of him, Simone Ellis. Gary quickly flipped through a few pages on the tablet, then nodded, his voice still steady, as if reading a revenue report. "Ems. Ellis was switched from a fixed shift to a flexible schedule last month," he said, "in strict accordance with the personnel optimization policy applied to the whole system. The scheduling algorithm is based on hourly customer traffic, cutting hours in shifts with low revenue." "Who approved this?" Julian asked. "No one approved it individually," Gary replied, completely honestly, with no intention of evading. "The system runs automatically every week. We only follow the exact process approved by the board of directors from 3 years ago, when the company deployed the new scheduling software to reduce operating costs. Julian looked at him and realized a thing that sent a colder chill down his spine than last night in the parking lot. Gary was not an evil person. Gary was just a 50-year-old man, doing exactly the job assigned, exactly to the payroll, exactly to the policy, with nothing to accuse. There was no one to get angry at. The villain was the machine. Why 36 hours? Julian continued to ask. Why not 40? Gary paused slightly, for the first time in the conversation. 36 is the safe threshold, he said. Under 30 hours, the company has no obligation to provide health insurance under federal law. With a scale of 217 stores, keeping the majority of part-time employees under that threshold helps save about $62 million in insurance money every year. He said that number as if reading a line in a quarterly financial report without a bit of hesitation, without a bit of remorse, because to him, it was just a number, a good number. Julian sat still, his two hands clasped together on the table, looking down at the folder, where Simone Ellis's name lay among thousands of other names, each name just a line of data in an algorithm designed to optimize hourly profit. This was not just Simone's story. This is how his entire empire operates, and he had never once asked how it operates, because the final number on the quarterly report was always good. This scheduling method, labor researchers call it real-time scheduling, a popular method in the American retail industry for over a decade. According to an analysis by the Economic Policy Institute, nearly 4 in 10 retail and service workers receive their work schedule less than a week before their shift begins, making it almost impossible for them to plan for childcare, further schooling, or keeping a stable second job. Many studies also point out a similar thing to what Gary just described in a completely calm voice. Keeping the working hours of part-time employees below a certain threshold to avoid insurance obligations is not an illegal thing. It is a loophole pre-designed into the policy, and a series of large retail chains in America all use it in the exact same way. Julian closed the folder. "We cannot change the algorithm," Gary added, looking at him, trying to read his boss's facial expression. "It applies to the whole system. If we adjust individually for one store, we will have to adjust for all." Julian nodded, slowly, but in his head, he was hearing another word, not the word Gary just said. Gary said cannot. But Julian heard another word, not wanting to. And he had built that system. He did not just stand outside watching a tragedy on the news screen last night. He had funded it, every single penny, with the very signature approving the scheduling software 3 years ago, when he only saw the number of $62 million saved, but did not see any woman having to sleep in a car. Poverty is not just lacking money. Poverty is lacking information. An asymmetry keeping the doors tightly locked, not because they are sealed shut, but because no one had ever shown Simone where the door handle was located. No one had ever told her that there was a clause in the company policy allowing employees to complain about sudden hour cuts, a clause located on page 83 of the employee handbook that no one had ever truly read to the end. Julian stood up, walked to the office window, looking down at the city of Boston stretching out below, thousands of lights from apartments he did not know how many people inside were sleeping in cars right under the logo bearing his name. "Gary," he said, not turning back. "I need the list of all employees cut down to under 30 hours in the past 6 months." Gary blinked, not understanding why, but still nodded, typing a few commands on the tablet. "How many people?" Julian asked. Gary looked at the screen, then looked up, his voice still steady like every other number he had ever read in his life. 2,841 people, he said, across the entire system. Julian did not call Simone back. He did not want her to think he was exchanging a night of meeting for a favor, did not want her to feel she owed him anything. Instead, he worked silently, through a private lawyer not bearing the company name, leaving no trace leading back to him. Within a week, Simone's working hours were restored to 36 hours, accompanied by a retroactive compensation for the 3 cut months, recorded in the system as a technical error adjustment. Her application for emergency housing assistance, which had been on the waiting list for 27 months, was unexpectedly approved within 9 days. A 2-bedroom apartment in Dorchester, the deposit already paid in advance, waiting for her to sign the contract. Simone received a call from the city housing office on a Tuesday afternoon, the clerk's voice happily reporting the news as if it were a normal administrative miracle. She hung up, stood stunned in the middle of the Reeves parking lot, her hand still holding the phone, and in her head she only had one name, She drove straight to the Reeves headquarters, asked the receptionist to find Julian Reeves, and when he stepped out to the lobby, before he even had time to speak, she spoke first, her voice not trembling at all, only having a coldness that had been repressed over the past few days. "What are you doing?" Julian intended to explain, but Simone did not give him the opportunity. "You decided for me. You submitted documents with my name on them to an agency that I must be responsible for explaining to later. And you do not think I deserve to know a single word in advance? Do you know who else also used to decide for me without asking? My old landlord took back my apartment without a reason. The scheduling system of your own company cut my working hours with a light blue notification line, with no name, no signatory. My husband left without a word, leaving me to decide everything alone since that day. And now it is you, a man who thinks that because he has money and has good intentions, he is allowed to skip the part of having to ask. Kindness that strips away people's right to choose is not kindness, sir. That is control with prettier lights. I do not need you to save me. I need you to let me save myself." Julian opened his mouth, intending to say something about his mother, about the jacket, about being 27 years late. But he closed it, because she was right. He had done exactly the thing he had seen his company do, only in a different direction. Deciding for a woman, based on what he thought was good for her, without once asking what she wanted. Simone turned her back and walked out of the lobby, did not accept the apartment, called to decline the approved subsidy, and started over from the beginning by herself, exactly the way her mother had taught her. You work, you pay for yourself, you owe no one and no one owes you. She submitted the application for housing assistance again, exactly according to the process, exactly in the waiting line, with no one intervening behind the scenes. She asked for an extra shift at a nearby convenience store, 4 hours every morning before the main shift at Reeves, only getting to sleep 4 hours a day. She registered for an evening course at the community college, a nursing certificate, $50 a month, extracted from a salary that already did not have 50 spare dollars. 6 weeks later, she was dropped from the course. Not because of bad grades. She had achieved the highest score in the class in the first 2 tests. She was dropped because she had missed 2 consecutive mandatory classes, both times because she had to take unexpected extra shifts at the convenience store, shifts that she could not refuse if she did not want to lose her job. The school's regulations had no exceptions for any reason, even if that reason was a single mother trying to earn enough money to raise 2 children. And worse, because she was busy with the extra shifts, she had missed the mandatory parent meeting at Kizia's school twice in a row, causing her childcare record to be marked as at risk, an administrative note line that could lead to social workers intervening more deeply in her raising of her children. The machine counted faster than her. It always counted faster than those who had no one standing behind them. That night, at a cheap diner on Dudley Street, where the mother and 2 children stopped by after the shift to share the single portion of French fries, Micah pulled his mother's sleeve, asking when they would finally have a real home. Simone opened her mouth, intending to say the familiar sentence, the 3 words that had always been ready on the tip of her tongue for months now. "Our car." She stopped midway, unable to finish that sentence. Not because of forgetting, because for the first time, she did not want to lie to her child once again, even if it was just a lie out of love. She placed her hand on Micah's hand, saying another sentence, more truthful. "Mom is trying, son. Mom promises Mom is trying." That night, Simone sat in the car, after putting her 2 children to sleep at the house of a kind neighbor, alone in the dark, and for the first time in many years, she no longer knew how to pay for herself anymore. She took her phone out, found the number Julian had left on the business card that she had intended to throw away but kept in her wallet, not clear why. She looked at that number for a long time, her finger hovering over the screen. Calling this call was not because she had forgiven him for arbitrarily deciding for her last week, not because her self-esteem had dried up, because of her children. She pressed call. Julian answered the phone after 1 ring, his voice showing a hint of surprise. Simone took a breath, kept her voice straight, not trembling, even though inside she was trembling violently. "I need help," she said. "And this time I am asking." Julian did not answer immediately over the phone. He only said he would come, asking her to give him an hour. But he did not go to meet her immediately. He drove to Cedar Grove first, in the middle of the night, standing in front of the stone slab engraved with the name Gwendolyn Reeves. "I am sorry for being late," he said. "I am always late. With Mother. With her. With all the people like Mother." He told the stone slab about Simone, about Kizia, about Micah, about the jacket rolled up as a pillow. He told about Gwendolyn when she was young, about the dream she had never told anyone but him, that she wanted to be a fourth-grade teacher. The admission application form to the community college lay in her cabinet drawer for 6 whole years, never being filled out, because she did not have time. She did not have time, Julian said. She was busy ensuring that I had time. He sat down on the dew-wet grass and said, "She still has time. Do not waste her time." He stayed there for a very long time, until tears flowed down, for the first time in 27 years. Not sobbing, not a single sound. Only his 2 hands trembling on the cold stone slab, where his mother's name was engraved without a birth date, because in the end, he still did not know exactly which day it was. When the trembling had subsided, he thought about the number Gary gave him last week. 2,841 people, just in his system alone, cut down to under the 30-hour threshold so the company would not have to pay insurance. He took the phone, called Gary right when it was almost morning, waking him up. "I want to stop that scheduling algorithm," Julian said. "The entire system. Not one store. All 217 stores," Gary, his voice still sleepy, asked back whether he was sure, because that meant $62 million in incurred insurance costs every year. "I am sure," Julian said, "and fine for me to see which places have done this before us." Boston was not the first place to face this matter. Many years ago, Seattle, Chicago, New York City, and Oregon State had enacted predictive work scheduling laws, forcing large retail chains to notify work schedules at least 14 days in advance and pay extra money to employees if schedules were changed at the last minute. That law had been in effect for many years. But according to the Economic Policy Institute, the majority of retail workers in cities that did not yet have this law did not even know such a regulation had existed elsewhere, because there was no union, there was no flyer, there was no one who had ever told them that there was another way of doing things. That door had always been there. It was just that no one had ever shown Simone, or the 2,841 other people in Julian's system, where it was located. Julian did not need to wait for the law to force Reeves to do that. He only needed one night, standing close enough to a cold car, to see it. He put away the phone, drove to meet Simone, bringing no money, bringing no contract, bringing nothing other than a single offer that he had learned how to say properly. Not "I will take care of you," but rather, "What do you need? And I will help you be able to do that yourself." Simone returned to work the night shift at Reeves exactly 36 hours a week, no more, no less, because she refused any special favors other than exactly what the law prescribed for a normal employee. The same night shift, the same blue uniform frayed at the cuffs, the same aching legs at 3 in the morning, when the store was empty of customers and the humming sound of the fluorescent light became the only sound left in the space. Julian helped with exactly one thing, the thing that Simone proposed herself when she called that night. He used his connections to talk to the board of directors of the community college, not asking them for special exceptions, only requesting them to reconsider the rigid absence policy for students who are single parents working the night shift, a policy that not only Simone, but hundreds of other students in the school were also facing. The school agreed to let her study again from the beginning, with a new clause allowing to make up a maximum of 2 classes each semester for cases with work shift confirmation. The rest, Simone did by herself. She registered for the nursing course again, paying $50 each month herself from a salary that still had never had 50 spare dollars. Only difference was this time she arranged her work schedule more tightly, asking to swap shifts with colleagues in the weeks having tests. There was one night, around 2 in the morning, she almost gave up. She sat on the floor of the newly rented small apartment, her back leaning against the old clicking heater. The stack of medication dosage calculation slips spread all over her knees, the multiplying and dividing numbers blurring before her eyes because she had been awake continuously for 19 hours, from the morning shift at the convenience store, to the main shift at Reeves, to this studying hour. Friday's test had 20 dosage calculation math problems. She did 11 correctly. She needed all 20 correct because the school only gave one chance to retake the exam, and she had used that chance for the previous semester. She dropped her head down onto the stack of papers, tears rolling out uncontrollably, not because of pain, just because of being exhausted to the point her body had no other way to release. Right at that moment, there was a light knock on the door. It was Mrs. Odessa Whitmore, the 68-year-old woman living in the opposite apartment, the owner of a small laundromat on the street, who had been familiar with Simone's face since the first days she moved in, when she saw her carrying the 2 children down the stairs at midnight to go to her shift. She did not ask, did not console with words. She only stood at the door, wearing a sleeping robe, her hands holding a cup of hot ginger tea. "Bring the 2 children over here," she said, her voice not a question. "You just study." Simone intended to refuse, saying that she did not need to do so, but Odessa had stepped in, put the teacup down on the table, looking straight into her eyes. "I washed clothes for hire for people for 22 years before getting the first washing machine bearing my name," she said. "No one handed it to me. I stood at the machine until my back hunched down, saving every penny. Then one day I opened my own store, and no one called me a hired worker anymore. You do not wait for someone to open the door ready for you. You tighten every screw yourself, install every hinge yourself. Then one day you step through that door as if it were always yours. You did not ask me to watch the grandchildren. I am telling you. Bring them over here. You study." From that night, every time Simone had a test, Odessa took in watching Kizia and Micah, not taking a single penny, even though Simone tried to pay multiple times. On the living room wall of the new apartment, Simone pasted a pink sticky note with Kizia's scribbled crayon handwriting, written from the days still in the car. "Mom can do it. I love Mom." She pasted it right next to the study desk, like a diploma she had not yet gotten, looking at it every night before closing the book. On the windowsill next to the two children's bed, the small blue flashlight still lay there, even though the room now had a real night light. Simone did not throw it away. She kept it like keeping a reminder that light once had to be self-created before anyone flipped a switch to help her. 6 months later, Simone graduated from the primary nursing course at the community college, where the auditorium ceiling had a water stain spreading out like an old bruise. Not Harvard, having no red carpet, having no famous speech. She achieved a B+ grade, not an A, because there was one semester she had to miss makeup classes more than expected. In the blue gown she had ironed flat herself at 5 in the morning with an iron having a frayed power cord that she did not have enough money to replace. She stepped onto the stage, finding the eyes of Kizia and Micah among the rows of seats, and received the diploma with both hands, as if afraid it would slip away if only holding it with one hand. Odessa clapped the loudest in the auditorium, standing right up even before Simone's name was called out. A year later, also on a November night, Julian Reeves stood again in the middle of that very parking lot, his hand holding the Range Rover keys, the Reeves neon light still shining above his head like that other night. But this time, the car parked in the far corner no longer had anyone sleeping in it. It was just an empty car, doors carefully locked, waiting for its owner to return after the shift. Julian looked around, then laughed to himself, softly, because for the first time in 27 years, the silence of a parking lot no longer made him suffocate. His phone vibrated. A message from Simone, accompanied by a photo. Kizia standing in front of the new fridge in the apartment, pointing at the milk carton, grinning widely. The accompanying text only had 4 words. "Our car is warm." But this time, those 4 words were not a lie out of love. It was a warm family joke, a private inside joke only they understood about the night a year ago when everything started. Julian stood there, read the message again 3 times, then put the phone in his pocket. For 27 years, the silence of cold parking lots had filled his sleepless nights. Tonight, that silence had disappeared. Not forgotten. Overwritten. By a child's question, "Are we going camping, Mom?" By a single mother's accusation, kindness that strips away people's right to choose is not kindness. By a 68-year-old woman's order, "Bring the 2 children over here, you study." Those were the voices living in his walls now. Not far away, right at the entrance gate to the human resources area of the Reeves headquarters, another evening was taking place. Simone stood there, no longer a night shift cashier, but in the intern nurse uniform of a nearby community clinic, where she just took a job 3 months ago, specializing in caring for families without insurance, people for whom a 6-week wait could be time they do not have. She was talking to a younger woman, named Alicia, carrying a baby in her arms, standing next to an old car parked in the corner of the lot, where the security camera only swept past once every 40 seconds. She did not say much. She handed Alicia a business card, a small blue flashlight, old but still shining well, and a gas voucher enough to fill a tank, accompanied by a handwritten piece of paper. For the next mother trying to keep her child warm with half a gas mark left. Alicia took it, her eyes red, not yet fully understanding the meaning of the small flashlight, but immediately understanding the text, because she too had looked at the gas gauge many nights like that. Simone did not have a Range Rover. She did not have $5,200,000,000. She had a thing that Julian himself later still told anyone asking him about this story was much more precious. The understanding that only comes from having lived through it. Before you go, I want to be honest with you. The story you just heard is fiction. Julian Reeves and Simone Ellis are not real. I made them up, but the crisis behind this story is completely real. According to the National Center for Homeless Education, over 1,200,000 American students experience homelessness every school year, a portion of whom live with their families in cars, because that is the only choice left after all other doors have closed. We often say people lose their homes, as if they forgot it somewhere, as if it fell under the seat. They did not lose it. The system abandoned them, and the rest of us changed the channel. If you or a loved one are facing a similar situation, please call 211 to be connected with local housing assistance services or contact the National Alliance to End Homelessness to learn more about the programs existing right now, just waiting for someone to show you where they are. Thank you for staying until the end. I know it was a long story. I want to ask you something. In your life, has anyone ever said the sentence, "Our car is warm" to you, whether literally or figuratively? Or have you ever been the one saying that sentence to keep someone from being afraid? Tell me in the comments section. I read them all. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Not for the algorithm, for the conversation. See you again in the next story.